Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show. Check out some of my past interviews. We've got all kinds of great interviews across multiple different podcasts. I talk to smart entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, all kinds of companies ranging from Netflix to Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation, Blizzard, LendingTree, and many more. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And first, quick shout out to David Bartholomew, who recommended today's guest. David, thank you so much for that. One of my past guests as well. And our guest here today is Brian Brault. He is an author. He's a leadership coach. He's a speaker. He's co-chair of the Entrepreneurial Master's Program, which we will talk about as well, which was created by Vern Harnish, another past guest on my podcast. He's also the founder of Legacy of Significance, which does executive education retreats and trainings and leadership coaching. Also the founder and CEO of Pure Wellness, a company that transforms interior spaces into world-class wellness environments, and does couples retreats as well with Warren Rustin, another past guest on this show. So we have lots of things to talk about here today. And of course, this is brought to you by Rise 25 Media, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts. So go check us out at rise25media.com to learn all about it. And final notice, this is about part of our GLC series, the Global Leadership Conference series, where we are featuring entrepreneurs, organization members who have attended GLC, which this year in 2022 is going to be held in April 23rd to 26th in Washington, D.C., and also in Barcelona, Spain, and also virtually. So if you are a member of Entrepreneurs Organization, go to eonetwork.org and you can learn more about it. All right, Brian, with that, so excited to have you here today. And I want to start at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey. You turned a college project into your first business, Advanced Facility Services. What was that? How did that come about?
Oh, hey, John, great to be here and great question. So it started with my senior year in the undergraduate program at the University of Buffalo. We had to develop a business on paper. Now, that was quite a few years ago, back when vinyl siding on homes was relatively a new thing. And it was designed to be maintenance free. And I used to walk by this one building every day on the way into school, and it had vinyl siding on it and it looked dirty. So I went up one day and kind of ran my finger across and realized it's just all surface stuff. So I had this idea of power washing vinyl siding on homes. And so when I was asked to develop a business on paper for a class project, that's the business I chose. So moving forward a little bit, all the job offers I got out of my senior year in undergraduate were going to pay me less than what I earned putting myself through school. So I decided that if I got a master's in business, that might help my job prospects a little bit more. And so I decided I would go to graduate school and get my MBA. So I happened to develop, I got an assistantship to study for my MBA. So for the first time in my life, I didn't have to worry about paying for college. So I decided, hey, you know what? Let me take some $500 that I got from graduation and start this business power washing vinyl siding on homes. So
just buy a power washer and you're off to the races.
I bought a power washer and I was off to the races. And then right before school started in the fall, I approached a grocery store chain about power washing the front of their store. And I bid on it, what equated to being about $1 an hour in the end for how long it took me to do that job, actually paid off really, really well, because they started asking me to do all sorts of other projects. And pretty quickly it grew into a real business. And so I ended up saying, listen, I can always go back to finish my MBA, but I got a job opportunity or a business opportunity. Let me see where this goes. So that's what I did. I started building a business, and 28 years later, I sold that business. We were probably at about 300 employees at our peak, and did quite a bit.
And I want to ask about how you grew it. But first, I imagine as a coach, you come across this from time to time where you have people come to you and they say, I'm thinking about undercutting my prices because of the opportunity that might come along. And you just said that with this grocery store chain, you did it $1 an hour and it ended up having this big opportunity. But there's such tension for so many businesses. Do you lower your prices in order to get the work? How do you reflect on that all these years later?
Well, I didn't intentionally work for $1 an hour. I bid a job at $300 that I thought I would do really well on. And I realized what I had done before I bid on the job, I did a little test patch. Well, the test patch was really easy. So I thought, I'll fly through this. Well, I must have picked the easiest spot on the entire storefront because it ended up taking me about 300 hours. And so that's why I made $1 an hour. However, I think it's really a matter of saying, it's a combination of having respect for your value and recognizing what it takes to show what your value is. And so it's sometimes it's just reading what's going on. There are times when you know what your value is with respect to your customer, and then there's other times when they don't really know who you are. In a business that I started later, we actually had a revenue share model that worked exceptionally well for us because we knew what our value was, but getting customers to take that leap of faith and scratch out a check for 50 grand is a tougher sell. So we actually turned it around and said, I'll tell you what, we'll put these rooms in for free. You pay us a certain amount of money when you receive it. And then once you reach a certain hurdle, we'll then split it with you. And we actually made substantially more money with that revenue share model because we knew what our value was and we took all the risk out of it for the customer.
And this is the pure wellness business?
That's the pure wellness room. So we would go to hotels and talk to them about creating special wellness rooms in hotels that created a very healthy environment. So the surfaces that you touch, the quality of the air that you breathe was really a far superior quality to any other hotel room that exists. And hotels love the concept, but to scratch out a check for $50,000 for 20 rooms on a floor in their hotel was a tough sell at times, and certainly at the beginning. So we created a revenue share model that we would put the rooms in at no charge. Then the first $1,800 in premiums that they were able to collect for those rooms, they gave to us. And then from that point on, they retained 60% of the premium they charged, and we got 40%.
Interesting model.
Yeah, for them, it was money that they found a revenue stream they didn't have to come up with capital for. And we actually made more money.
It's interesting. That company is about 20 years old. And yet, talk about a company that seems to have been created for these times. Pure Wellness, I'm reading directly from your website here, protects against 99.9% of viral and bacterial contaminants, including COVID-19. So what I'm curious about is, what was 2020 like for you? Was it an influx of business? Was it an immediate drop in business? How was that business affected by COVID?
Yeah, great question, because it would seem like we should have taken off instantly. The challenge is 99% of our market was the hotel space, and hotels went from an average of like 87 to 88% occupancy, which means 87 to 88% of their rooms are fully occupied throughout the course of the year at it being paid at a rate down to low single digits, which means 2, 3, 4% occupancy.
Wow.
And our program success is based on occupancy in hotels. So 99% of our market went down to next to nothing.
Wow.
And hotels charge a premium for our rooms. And when your occupancy is down that low, you're just happy to get anybody to come into your hotel and stay there and pay you money to stay there. So it was a very difficult time for us at first, but what the CEO and the marketing team and the operations team came together and said, let's shift our focus from hotels into office space, because all of a sudden, buildings needed to create a reason why people would want to come back. And so we started pivoting to office buildings. And so we've been building relationships with building owners and property developers on creating very healthy environments inside office.
It's really critical now as we record this in March of 2022, when a lot of companies are trying to lure their people back into the office space. I want to ask you about, when did you first join EO? And you joined EO, it was with Advanced Facilities Services, and you had a tremendous result the first 4 years that you were in EO in terms of growing that business.
Yeah, so I started my business in 1986, and in 2001, I qualified for EO, but I didn't. What attracted me to it is I had somewhat plateaued in my growth, and I wanted to grow the company, but I knew I was going to need help. And also, quite frankly, I was kind of lonely. Most of the people that I had in my life didn't necessarily understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Amazing people, amazing resources, but they just didn't think necessarily the way I did. So whenever I would go to weddings or parties, I would always migrate towards those other entrepreneurs. So I felt like I had kind of found my tribe, but more importantly, I was really attracted to the learning programs that EO offered, both at the chapter, regionally and globally. So I joined EO in May of 2001, and then 4 months later, 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And so really I walked into Forum, and one of my forum mates started talking about SBA disaster funding, and we were able to secure a loan that really helped us survive as a business. And what I did is I just started jumping in with both feet to every learning opportunity I had. I attended every local event, started going to some regional conferences EO had. I signed up for the executive education program, which is now EMP, or the Entrepreneurial Master's Program. At the time, it was called Birthing of Giants. I didn't get in my first try. It took me a second try, and I got in. And that changed my life on many levels. One is, it started, I attended the year one of Birthing of Giants in Dedham, Massachusetts, at a MIT retreat campus. And while I was there was a guy who had studied Russian history, and he said, "Hey, listen, there's a regional conference EO is putting on this September. If anyone has a chance to go, you really need to go to this." So I thought, what the heck? So I had never really left the country. I mean, I live 10 minutes from Canada, so I travel to Canada a lot, but other than Canada, I had never really left the country. And so I decided, what the heck, I'll go. So I went to this regional conference in Moscow, Russia, and it was just such an incredible experience. I called my wife the second day. I said, whatever we need to do to travel the world, we need to, because we just don't really understand what's going on in the rest of the world. It also, because of that, it started me down a path of, starting to make connections with other EO leaders. I wasn't a leader at the time, but EO leaders that would be at these events, and a lot of the professional staff, which eventually later would start to get me involved in leadership positions outside the chapter. But let me step back to the Entrepreneurial Master's Program, or Birthing of Giants at the time.
Sure.
That started to get me to think differently about my business. It started to help me think bigger than I had ever thought of before. And it helped me realize that I don't have to be the one with all the answers in my company. That if I can really develop a great culture in my company, if I can share my numbers with people that can influence how we earn, how we profit, how we grow our business, and really create environments for us as an organization to really scale our business, it just shifted the way I thought. And so I took all the concepts that are taught in EO, and specifically with the Entrepreneurial Master's Program, and started to put them into my business. We were really particular about how we recruited, hired, and retained top talent, or A players. We started using open book management, sharing numbers with the people who influence how our company performs. And we really started being very creative with the way we grew our team and grew our business. I started creating small little entrepreneurial environments within our company.
Yeah, and I assume by this point you're not just doing vinyl siding. You've
No, yeah. In
expanded to
fact,
other things.
we actually never did vinyl siding anymore. But what we did is we always approached every customer as if they were our only customer, and that was just natural to me. There was a guy that I did work for that he owned 3 grocery stores, and my biggest customer had 200 grocery stores. He always felt, and I never knew it until much later, that I always treated him as if he was my biggest customer. He said, "You always made me feel like I was your most important customer." He said, "I knew I wasn't because I knew who your big customer was." So he ended up selling those stores. And I thought, well, you know what? It was a good run. He sold his stores. Well, about a year and a half later, he ended up as the director of property management for the largest privately owned owner of shopping centers, retail strip centers in the country.
Mhm.
And he started asking me to do other types of services than what we had previously provided him. He said, because I just like the way you approach taking care of customers. I like your work ethic. I like your culture. I like your people. So that actually started to expand us way beyond what the product lines we were originally offering, the services we were offering. He also had a big division down in Florida that he was looking to have us help manage their properties for a period of time and then provide bundled services, which really started to evolve us into a total facility service company back before it was really popular. And so we just, again, we had the opportunity in front of us, but
Yeah.
it was really a lot of the learning that we had in EO and the Birthing of Giants or Entrepreneurial Masters program is what made us ready for it.
Yeah.
So,
Now there's kind of 2 tensions that come up from what you've just articulated. One is, do you stay in your lane, stay true to what you've known, what you've been doing, or do you expand your services? And then the other one is when a big client, a whale client comes to you, and then that portion of your revenue becomes so big that you come kind of indebted in a way to that client. You've got one client, too many eggs in one basket. Did either of those 2 things enter into your mind as you engaged in this service?
so yes and yes. They What was fortunate is that one big customer that this guy who owned the grocery stores always knew was my biggest customers kept getting bigger. So when he left and joined this other management company or shopping center ownership company, they started to become big as well. But we also started growing with an additional grocery store chain and also universities, and we started doing work with banks. So quite honestly, we started getting a lot of really big customers because we started gaining momentum on really our reputation and so forth. So you asked a couple great questions there. We were a service company. And so what we did is we stayed focused on being a service company. But what we did is added ancillary services to what we were doing. So we started out as a power washing and specialized cleaning company, which means going in with scaffolding and doing high level cleaning inside of grocery stores. And we didn't do what most companies could do. We did what really no one else could do. And from there, we expanded into floor care. And then from there, when we started providing services in general. And what we would do is we would go out and hire subcontractors who were the best in the field in that market to work with us. And eventually, we started to build up our own team of experts to be able to provide those services. So we didn't. Whenever we added a new ancillary service offering, we went out and tried to hire the best leaders in that space, in that market, to lead our portion of our company. That's why what we would do is we would set up like an entrepreneurial company within our company. We had central human resources, central accounting, and central administrative support that, and also central leadership. So one CEO, one chief operating officer, one chief financial officer. And then other than that, each general manager of that entrepreneurial division was responsible as if they owned the business. So
they had the P&L.
They were ultimately hired, ultimately making the decisions around who to hire, who to fire, as long as they fit criteria.
Yeah.
And sales and marketing, budget forecasting, performance, and delivering on the service.
Really interesting model there. And then how did Pure Wellness come about? Because I could see kind of the interrelated nature of it, because you're dealing with facilities in a sense. How did you decide to make that be its own separate company?
Well, in mid 2000s, we were recognized by Inc. as one of the 500 fastest growing companies. That was before it was the 5,000 list. It was just the 500 list. And when you make that list, you get a lot of press, certainly in the market that you're in. And so there were a lot of people reaching out to us with business ideas. Well, interestingly enough, my assistant, buzzed me one day and said, "Hey, this person is on the phone for you." Well, this person's name was a very unique name. It happened to be the head of human resources for my biggest customer. I thought, wow, why is he calling me? And we had previously bought a division of their grocery store chain. It was their internal service department. We took over that department for them. So
another interesting model, by the way, when the client doesn't want to run a particular division, they sell it to you.
Yeah,
I've got a forum mate who's employing that strategy now.
Oh, and it just really took us to a whole new level. It was great. Well, so then when the head of human resources for my largest customer is calling me, I thought, wow, I wonder if there's another opportunity. Wow, the crazy thing is, it happened to be someone else with the exact same name. And he headed a market research firm representing a Swedish engineer. So I took the call because of the name, and it was a different person. And, he had me on the phone. So he kind of quickly gave me a pitch that he's this market research firm representing this Swedish engineer who had developed this concept for allergy-friendly hotel rooms. And so I thought, well, let me take a look at it. Maybe we'll set it up as another division within our company. We did some research. We went to Cornell University, to their hotel school, the dean of the school, and he actually did a Cornell quarterly study on it and felt like there was a real good opportunity there. We talked to Hilton hotels and Marriott hotels, and they both came to us and said, "Hey, we think this has legs." So we decided it's different enough from what we do because it doesn't service really our local markets. We had to build outside our current markets. So we dedicated some resources and people to it to say, why don't we start a new business and just build this? And so we did. About a year into it, I realized that I don't really understand the hotel space. So we brought on an investor who had spent his career as part of a team buying and selling and managing hotels. And so he came on, he brought some capital that we needed, and also he brought some expertise in the hotel space and really helped us understand how to sell to that market.
I know we're going a little over on time here, but this is all fascinating. So I appreciate you sharing it all.
Sure.
I want to ask you about, you got involved in EO, and eventually advanced to leadership. You become the chair of the global board of directors. What drove that? What drove, not everyone does that. There's 16,000 members now, but that takes a big commitment. What motivated you to do that?
What motivated me to become the chair, or?
Yeah, I guess more broadly, it wasn't a well-articulated question.
No, it's okay.
More broadly, get involved in leadership.
So great. So there was a period of a couple of years where my business had really started to grow a lot. I graduated in the Birthing of Giants class of 2005. A year later, Vern Harnish decided that he was going to step away from running the Birthing of Giants, which is now the Entrepreneurial Master's Program. And so they looked for three people who they felt could step in and lead each person lead a year. So I thought that would be amazing. So going back to when I started traveling and going to universities and conferences for EO, I started getting to know the leadership at the time as well as the staff. And so Brian Hansel, who was the chair at the time, he and I had run into each other at a couple conferences. So he suggested my name. At the same time, I also raised my hand because I thought I would enjoy being a form trainer. I had no idea what a form trainer really was. I just thought form was amazing and life-changing. And I thought that I'd love to kind of volunteer my time 3-4 times a year and train in form. So at the same time, I was stepping into being one of the co-chairs of the Entrepreneurial Master's Program and becoming a form trainer. I'd had a kind of an interesting position on the Global Form Committee, just as like a test subject for something, for what is now form experts. And so very quickly I became one of the chairs of EMP, and they asked me if I would consider being the global forum chair. And I can remember at the time thinking, did you ask like a dozen other people? And they all said no. Why are you asking me? I don't really have a ton of experience in it. And they said it was more my leadership style than anything else. And I didn't know what my leadership style was at the time. And quite frankly, didn't necessarily think I was a great leader. So what happened, John, between then and becoming global chair is every role I ever played in EO leadership, I absolutely positively was certain it would be my last role in leadership I would play. 100%. In fact, every time that I was convinced to continue on in leadership, I consciously thought, okay, this is when they're going to realize I'm just not that good of a leader. And so what I did, and I think it's really important for EO members to understand this, and I get asked all the time, what do I need to do to get on the global board? Or what do I need to do to be global chair? And my answer is this: focus on the role that you are in when you're in it and nothing else. Because if you're executing in one role and you're thinking about something else, you're not in your role. You're in a role that may or may not come to you. And your family deserves, if you're going to raise your hand and take time away from your family and your business to volunteer in EO, your family and your business deserve you to be the best you can be in what you've raised your hand to do. Your members, your fellow members deserve 100% of your focus on the role that you've committed to. And certainly you do as an individual. You want to be good at what you do. So just focus on the role that you're in. And so what happened is I never wanted to advance in leadership. I just never did. It's just I just wanted to be good at the role that I was in. And what would happen is people just kept asking me to step into other roles. And that's kind of what eventually had someone ask me if I would, consider applying for the board of directors. And I said no. And we had a conversation. It was Jody Darmawan, who was just an amazing human being, who was on the board at the time. And he said, Brian, the reason I'm asking you is this: you have an approach to leadership that is, you don't get caught up in the drama. You care about the people you lead, and the board is going to be going through a transition, and it's going to need your kind of leadership to be part of that board. And that spoke to me. And so I talked with my wife. We ended up going to Geneva University, really to see how the board interacts with members and how the board interacts with their family or their spouses when they're together. And what I saw was some pretty amazing things. I saw a board that really interacted well with the members. I saw a board that had their spouses with them as they were serving in leadership, and their spouses were a part of that. My wife is a very important part of my life, and my kids were grown and out of the house at that point, so that wasn't as much of a consideration. But my wife always has been, so I wanted to make sure she could be part of that journey.
That's great. I have so many things I want to ask you about, but I know we're running short on time. So a couple that I have to ask about before we run out of time. Sure. One, when you became global chair, you spoke at the UN, You gave a great impassioned speech about the importance of education. Talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you personally.
Well, yeah, it was just, kind of a cool thing to actually give a speech on the floor of the UN. In 2015, when I was leading, an EMP class, Jeff Hoffman, the founder of Priceline, had just returned from a trip around the world where he was advancing entrepreneurship. And he said something there that kind of crystallized what had been echoing inside me, and that is the power of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. And so I asked him if he would mentor me along with Warren Rustan, and they both separately did. Because at that point, I knew I was going to be on the board. And one of the things that Jeff Hoffman and I realized is that, entrepreneurs have a special heart, and tenacity and creativity and innovation. And if we could apply those talents to the way the world tries to solve problems, we may be able to come up with solutions that the bureaucracies or the governments of the world were struggling to. And we just don't take no for an answer. So I became very passionate about bringing entrepreneurs together to solve problems of the world. And so that's what we did at the UN. We were there a few different times, and it really made a significant impact. And I think it's an important partnership for EO.
Yeah. And talk about Global Leadership Conference, GLC, and for any EO members who are listening to this, why they should go to it.
Well, for me, the Global Leadership Conference was actually the very first event outside my chapter I went to. And I can remember thinking, wow, if this is the kind of event EO can curate to help train its future leaders, I can only imagine how incredible their programming must be for building your business and becoming a better entrepreneur. And so that's really what triggered me to apply for EMP and started, traveling around. So just the experience in and of itself changed my life, totally changed my life in terms of global travel, leadership in EO, and also jumping in and learning about how to build my business. Because then I started just going to everything EO offered. That in and of itself for me personally was just a great experience. It opened my eyes to the global aspect of EO beyond just my chapter. So that in and of itself was great. Plus, it made stepping into leadership roles in EO easier because I never felt like I was going to be going in blind. I knew that I was going to be trained by other people like me sharing their experiences, how they were successful in those roles. And so I knew that if I raised my hand to do something, I was going to be trained to do it. And there's just been some really amazing experiences at GLC over the years. I've made connections and relationships with people from around the world, and it's just been really one of the things I look forward to every year.
That's
and
great.
I've been in EO for 21 years.
That's great. And then last thing I want to ask you about, I know you've got a couples retreat, which you do every year with Warren Rustan. It's at a dude ranch, the Idaho Rocky Mountains. That's coming up later this year. Tell us about where and when it is and what you accomplished there. I know you mentioned your relationship with your wife is incredibly important.
Yeah. Oh, great question. So my wife and I, we've been married, 34 years, and we are certainly not marriage experts. We have our challenges just like everyone else does, but we've also been trained in other things. Form trainers. My wife is a coach, and so we've partnered with Warren Rustan, and also we have Caddy and Jamie Duragi join us as well, and we go up into a dude ranch in the Idaho Rocky Mountains. Either late August or late September. This coming year happens to be late September, and there are 22 couples that join us, and we spend a week in a ranch. And there's content in the morning, content late afternoon, and in between, we do everything from, ropes courses to we're assigned a horse for the week, and we can go horseback riding anytime we want. And you're going up into the trails of the Rocky Mountains. It's pretty exciting stuff. Bicycling, mountain biking, all sorts of amazing things. And what we do is we focus on presenting content that couples can then explore as a couple. So it's a really safe environment. You can raise your hand and ask questions or share things if you want, or you can just sit and observe and really only have conversations with your spouse if you want. Typically, people end up really warming up and creating some pretty amazing friendships and bonds with other couples throughout the course of the week. But regardless of where your relationship is, this week takes it to the next level. It's really impactful.
Brian, you're involved in so many different things. It's such a pleasure talking to you. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about the different projects you're involved in?
There's our website is legacyofsignificance.com, or my email address is Brian, Brian, at life-bydesign.com. life-bydesign.com.
All right, Brian, thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.